What's up, everybody? I'm here with Carly Euler today, my good friend from Memory Fox, not to be confused with Memory Horse, which I liked your email yesterday, your April Fool's email saying we're now Memory Horse.
We have been making that joke internally for months. Like, we think it's like the funniest thing. And then we were like, wait, we could put this joke out for April Fool's Day.
That.
A funny thing to do.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because at first, I mean, you read the subject line and like, I'm gullible. So like it had me going for a minute, and I was like, really?
I got so many replies of people that were like, what are people
why?
Like, I read it and what were you thinking? And then I realized it was a prank and that was so funny and you brightened my day. And I was like, oh, well, I hope I didn't actually like ruin anybody's day.
It was really funny. So good one. Good on you. So I'm excited today to talk about ethical storytelling. And I want to first get your definition of ethical storytelling and get into a report that you did on ethical storytelling at Memory Fox recently. But first, give us like the quick rundown on what is Memory Fox? What do you guys do? Who is Carly?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm the marketing director at Memory Fox, and we are a tech platform that helps nonprofits collect, organize, and share impact stories. And what we really strive to do is provide a tech platform that will help people do the collecting and the sharing of sensitive stories at their nonprofit ethically and authentically, because we see in every single webinar that everybody's ever taught that authenticity is the key to telling great stories. But more often we're now seeing that we need to make sure that we are being ethical when we're sharing and collecting those stories as well. So we have built specific features to be able to enhance that, but that's kind of our whole thing here at Memory Fox. But specifically the report, we actually started the idea of creating the report out of necessity. And that's because our customers were coming to us constantly and asking us questions like, well, what kinds of stories can I tell if the people I serve have very sensitive stories? And none of us, even those of us that had worked at nonprofits, including myself before, we hadn't really taken time to consider that there were stories that would be potentially too sensitive or that might cause barriers for people to wanting to collect and share stories. We, came from the perspective of, video is great and we should capture as many videos as possible. And that's going to be great for your brand and you're going to raise more funds. But we hadn't really thought about the ethical side until we were kind of forced to. And we thought we have two options here. We can continue to point people in other directions to learn from other people, or we can commit to learning ourselves and elevate those other people that are working so hard in the space about ethical storytelling. And that's what we decided to do.
Okay, cool. So I want to break this down. So ethical storytelling, sounds like you guys weren't originally going into business thinking about that framework, but now it really is I would say a stake in the ground that you guys have put in a lot of your marketing. I really love y'all's marketing. A lot of it is around ethical storytelling. But for those who don't quite understand what that means, there's truly included, what exactly is ethical storytelling?
Right. So that is a great question and totally fine that it's, maybe something that people aren't fully understanding. And that's because it's this wide, huge topic that has so many elements. But if you're really just going to break it down to kind of one definition, I would say that ethical storytelling, it would be the collecting and the sharing of stories from your community without exploiting them. So that sounds like, when you work at a nonprofit, of course, that's what you want to do, right? Everyone that works at nonprofits are doing it for good reasons. You're there because you want to help your community or you want to serve whatever mission that you're working for. So I don't say that to kind of attack people and say, hey, you're not doing this ethically, that's wrong. I think there really is just a big educational disconnect of how some practices, some traditional storytelling practices, are maybe things that we shouldn't be doing any longer.
What are some of those things? Like what? Let's talk examples.
Yeah. So there are probably some of the most obvious things that would come to mind would be simply collecting consent when you're telling someone's story. We do see that a lot of nonprofits are finding, we actually did this as part of our survey. I asked people, how important do you think consent is to ethical storytelling? And the individuals that took the survey, you know, by far the most people, is over 80% for the past 2 years, said that it was extremely important. But then when I asked, how do you feel your organization is currently doing? How well do you think your organization is currently collecting consent? It was a very, very small percent actually said that they felt they were doing it effectively currently. So there's a big disconnect between people wanting to do ethical storytelling by way of consent specifically, and people that are actually doing it in real time.
So, okay. And like, let's break this down a little bit more. This is relevant because Memory Fox is a platform where people can submit their videos from like community. It's like user-centered, community-centered sort of like storytelling submissions to your platform.
Yeah.
And then the organization, by having those sent in from donors or volunteers or advocates or whoever is like making the video, sends it to the organization, and then they have it within the Memory Fox platform to be able to use in their marketing and their storytelling.
Yes. But one of the big features that we do have is that when somebody is going to submit a video or a photo or a written testimonial, they actually have to go through the consent form before they move on to the actual story submission. So that's something that we take so seriously because it goes both ways, right? You want your storyteller to feel that they are truly sharing what they are agreeing to share, where they're agreeing to have it be shared. And then on the flip side, it helps your organization really put parameters around, this is how I'm planning to share your story. Are you okay with this? And there's a lot of liability there that nonprofits, sometimes it's not their fault, but maybe they haven't considered. So we really, if there was like maybe the number one thing you could do to start ethical storytelling, it would be at the very least to have a checkbox that says, I consent to having my story shared in so-and-so place. And that's kind of maybe one of the easier ways that you can like really get started with ethical storytelling.
Okay. And I think it's whatever vertical or industry you work in, if you're in marketing or like there's a lot of different platforms out there that will collect videos from like users and customers, and Memory Fox specifically works a lot in the nonprofit industry. But I think it's important to think about because I can't say that I've thought about that so much when asking. Like, I guess maybe I'm thinking consent is I ask a client, hey, could you send us a video testimonial? Right. And if they do it, they're consenting. Do you think there's like, does that count? Or do you think there's some additional sort of like step people should provide? And maybe this is why having a platform like yours is helpful.
So actually, you bring up such a good point because I've been there, right? I've worked at several nonprofits before this. And yes, what we would call that is kind of implied consent because they did say yes, and they sent you that video. And that is something that they, agreed to, right? They sent you the video.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets a little murky. The retention rate for people working at nonprofits is low, right? We see that nonprofit professionals leave a job every 18 months or so on average, especially fundraising professionals. So what happens when that new person comes into your role? Are they able to use that story? Do they have to comb through your email to see that there was some email correspondence? Like, where are you noting that? And where are you making it aware to that storyteller, the original storyteller, that I would like to now use your story. Is it okay if I use your story? When you kind of do consent up front, you can avoid some of those roadblocks. I know for me personally, one position that I worked at, we had the policy where we would always change the identifying factors of stories. So people's names, their locations. I worked at a veteran nonprofit, so we also would sometimes change like the military branch, certainly like the base that they were at in order to share their story, but have it be anonymous. But I often found that when we did that, we didn't have a great system in place for, has this story already been changed once? Is it going to be changed again before we share it? When was the last time we got approval to share this story? Like, what year is it from? And that's where you get into waters of like, well, how many things do you really change And at what point is it even a true story anymore? So these
Yeah.
are things that you need to consider when you're thinking about your consent, right? It's just there's a lot of aspects to it
Yeah.
that are challenging.
Yeah. Well, it definitely seems like another thing to manage. So, like having a system to make it easy, I think is probably pretty important. I have actually thought about that a little bit before. Even like, let's talk about like testimonials.
Mhm.
So, not a video, but just like a quote. And you quote that person. And then, like you said, like they're not there anymore. They're moved on to different things. Can you still use that quote? Should you not? Do you need to go back? Do you need to have something that says, you can always use this and quote it from
Right.
this company or business or organization? Is that
Right,
something that you
because
guys
when
looked at too?
definitely, because when people
Yeah.
are sharing their story with you, whether it's a quote or a video or anything, they're doing that with good intentions, and they're doing that because that's something that they feel like they want to do. But to truly have kind of the ethical lens behind it, it's really important to let them know upfront, this is how long I'm planning to use your story. I'll check back
Mhm.
in after this certain time. And I am planning to share it in these places. And if I am planning to share it somewhere else, I will check back in with you. Of
Yeah.
course, there's sometimes issues with following up with people and trying to find them if they have moved on. That can certainly be an issue. But again, maybe
Yeah.
that's an argument to not continue to share that story. Some kind of what that really boils down to, though, is this idea of creating an ethical storytelling standards guide, which is something
Mm.
I've kind of recently been learning about from the research I did with the report, that nonprofits that kind of have these organization-wide policies in place already, where they've already kind of made those decisions to say, hey, we're going to keep a story for 2 years, and then we're going to follow back up every other year if we want to
Mhm.
continue to use that story. Something as simple as that, and just having that policy down is really going to make all the difference, because first of all, your entire team is going to be on the same page and we won't have any discrepancy there. But second of all, your storyteller is going to know upfront, okay, I can expect to hear from them. And, we kind of see like that's going to reduce the stress on your storyteller, because they're saying, okay,
Yeah.
they've really thought about it. They're trying to be a good story steward. And these are things I'm comfortable sharing at this time.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so what are some other things that like you would never have seen coming? And then once you've like dug in and started doing the research and just seeing more and more users of your platform with all different types of stories coming in, like what are some big things that have surprised you? Maybe some aha moments.
There have been a lot of aha moments. So I would say kind of some of the biggest feedback, maybe anecdotally, that I've gotten from people just when I'm having these kind of organic conversations. People will say, okay, ethical storytelling, that sounds all well and good, using strength-based messaging, like referring to my community in a more positive light, or only sharing positive stories. That all sounds great, but I need to raise money. And people will say, well,
Yeah.
I've always done it this way, where I've collected the saddest story with the most despair and the most emotion, and just talking about someone's trauma and getting it on camera while they're sobbing, and that has worked for us in the past in terms of fundraising. And if they're okay with it, why don't we just continue to do that? So that's kind of maybe the more traditional thing. Sometimes you still see people sharing stories that way or collecting stories that way. But I want to share today that kind of one of the really interesting things that we found in the survey portion of the report is that 42% of respondents actually have already said that they have found ethical storytelling to still be an effective means of fundraising for them. And the next closest amount was 37%. And they said, I haven't personally had success yet with ethical storytelling, but I've seen it work in person. So those two together are the vast majority of respondents. On the flip side, we only had 17% say that they thought that that ethical storytelling would not raise them more funds, like it would remain the same or less. So it's really promising to see that fundraisers are really kind of coming around to the idea of maybe ditching a few of those old-fashioned ways of fundraising and storytelling, and seeing the actual results are still being positive for them.
Well, I have to imagine it's like it creates a more frequent touch point. So like when it comes to fundraising, like it creates a touch and just that extra touch point where you're going back to them and like having a conversation,
Right.
keeping them engaged, even if it's just, hey, can we, how are you doing? Are we good to still use this? It's like you're just staying in front of them. And it's going to start a conversation about other stuff.
Oh yeah. And when you go check back in with
Mm.
people, like you just said, you might get an update to that story. They might even have a different view on their life now and a different type of milestone that they've hit that you wouldn't have known about if you didn't go back and check back in with them. That's a really good point.
Well, I like this because it's like a mindset shift. Like at first I'm hearing like, oh God, another thing I have to do. But and well, what if those people now like won't let us use it? It's so hard to get them, you know? So like people could be thinking that. But really if you flip that on its head and you've got, let's like not approach it from that kind of more negative space mindset and let's like think of a more positive space mindset. It's like, yeah, they might have an update that's huge, that's like better. Or they might say, hey, thanks for checking in with me. And it's another engagement point. And then they're like, let me tell you what I'm up to now.
Right.
And then it's another way to just cultivate that relationship.
Yeah. I mean, you see organizations all the time sharing stories. They'll say, oh, it's our 50th anniversary, but here's the story of the first client we helped, or here's the story of our first program and how it launched with the first family that we worked with. And those are really compelling stories, and then they send those updates. Yeah. I mean, you see that with for-profits, you see that with nonprofits. Like that's a really interesting story to tell. Yeah. But I think also kind of what you're getting at is this idea of, again, sort of this is a traditional way of storytelling where you would have a story from somebody who participated in a program and you use it for fundraising. So that's like a one-to-one relationship. And now we're seeing you have all these types of stories you can collect. You have program participants, certainly, but you also have your volunteers, your board members, your donors, your staff, your community members, the people who are, donating. You have all these people who are a part of your community in a different way, and they all have great stories to tell as well. And then I know, Taylor, you're very good at, getting on camera and doing videos and stuff. But the idea that you don't do that just for one goal, right? I mean, there's also all these other goals that are beyond fundraising. It's education, it's brand awareness, it's actually performing your mission. There's 1,000 reasons why you want to collect a different story and share a different story for a different type of outcome too.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's go. Before we close out, want to ask you something because the show is really, I like to bring in like new areas of marketing, not always new, but just like a specific area of marketing.
Yeah.
So y'all's really sort of, okay, I said earlier, this is just the way I think of it. You kind of put your stake in the sand when y'all started really shifting towards this like ethical storytelling messaging in your marketing. How have you seen, do you mind sharing like the results of your marketing since you really consistently leaned into that messaging?
Yeah, definitely. So it has been a big differentiator for us in terms of other technology platforms that are kind of doing a similar thing to Memory Fox. Our whole team is super on board with it. We all like to, learn. We go to webinars. We like to learn from people. We're all, in the learning process as well. So internally and externally, we are like still getting on board. And it's been like a really positive experience for us to kind of continue learning as a team. But yeah, definitely like in terms of getting new people interested in Memory Fox or people understanding kind of what we stand for. I think we made this report and we've now made our second report. And these have been a great way where people can kind of get a foot in the door, kind of understand some new things that maybe they're doing a few things, but maybe they're interested in expanding ethical storytelling, or they're maybe interviewing a certain way that they want to make some changes. It's kind of been a pretty great way to start a lot of conversations with nonprofits, especially those with really sensitive missions, with missions where they are particularly sensitive in that they must have anonymous stories. They must have special considerations. There's, it's really kind of opened a lot of doors for us. And it's been overall a very positive experience.
Yeah. I think it's a good use case, a good example. I think y'all have really taken off, and it's a good example of like kind of, people talk about like niching down. It's a bit of a way to niche down, like, and like your messaging, and just to kind of claim this is where we're going, and then really consistent. And one of the things I want to say and I admire about y'all are a small team, and like you get a lot done, and I'm really impressed. And two, y'all are so consistent in that messaging, but also like, okay, you've got, for people watching the video, you always, all of you always have the plaid shirt on. I never see you without the plaid shirt. I'm guessing you wear something other than that plaid shirt, Carly, but I wouldn't know it. Nobody would know it. And it's a good vibe, and it's a good, like, consistent brand experience.
Well, I feel the same way about your brand. I think everything you do is so fun and engaging. And, when we do so we all work remotely, our whole team, we're across the country. So when we get to be in person with people, that is our chance to, first of all, talk to people for like the first time in months. But it's really a chance to get to explain how much fun we have at work, why we really love what we do. And kind of the number one way to do that is to draw people into our booth. And we do that with some fun branding. We have cute foxes. We like to, we're just fun people that really do believe in what we do. So definitely, if you ever see any of our orange flannels at a conference, stop by. It's somebody on my team. And we can have a great chat about storytelling, about what you do at your work, about your ethical storytelling goals. Like, everything starts with a great conversation.
Yeah, I think I need you to design my conference, like what should my swag be? We've got pretty cool purple sweatshirts. I've thought about like a whole purple tracksuit or something like that before. That's pretty all in, but I don't know. I might pick your brain on that one.
Well, we've been doing around March Madness. Our team is super into basketball. We're super into sports in general, but we got super into basketball. So we did like this fun initiative that was March Madness related. And I'm thinking I might need to get like a Memory Fox basketball jersey, maybe.
That's a good idea. This is the fun part.
That would match your tracksuit.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it would. Exactly. Yeah. Just don't sign me up for any bracket. I'm not good at sports. Cool. Well, Carly, if people want to get in touch with you or learn more about Memory Fox, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. Well, our website is memoryfox.io. You can find me on TikTok and LinkedIn, and then you can find Memory Fox on all platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. We're everywhere. So definitely give us a follow, and you'll see my face everywhere because I post a lot of videos. So you'll know it's me.
Yeah, she's your girl. If you wanna learn some great stuff in marketing and about video storytelling and ethical storytelling. So, Carly, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much. I always like talking to you. You're always a joy, and I hope this was helpful to those listening today. Until next time, I know you got a lot to get done, so go get your good shizzle done now, people.